Our lives are defined by moments.
I, Caroline, take you, Travis, to be my husband.
I promise to be faithful to you.
In good times and in bad.
In sickness and in health.
It was just before 11:30 that morning. I was taking a pan from the stove and putting it in the dishwasher, and I was talking to Travis and telling him a story.
Something went wrong and she went quiet. And so I asked her, hey, what's going on? And when she came back up, she was slurring her speech and she was shaking.
My vision was lost. Everything just went black. What I didn't realize in that moment was that Travis had noticed that the left side of my face was drooping.
And at that point, I realized something was really, really wrong. And so I called 911.
Within about 30 seconds, we heard the ambulance come down the street. He went outside to get the first responders, and they carried me out the door, and I talked to them the entire ride to Norwood Hospital.
I sat there and waited. I, at one point, heard a doctor come into the nurses area and said, we need a room. We need to make room. We have a 27-year-old female that is having a stroke.
That's when the doctor came in, and he said to me, hey, hun, we just talked to your husband. He knows you've had a stroke, and we need to get this CAT scan done right away because we have to make sure your carotid arteries aren't compromised.
I've never been so scared. We've been married for a week and a half. And all of a sudden, everything changes.
And finally, around 11:30 that night, we were taken by ambulance from Norwood Hospital to Boston Medical Center. We stayed in the hospital for 4 days, and that Friday afternoon, we were able to go home. And when we got discharged, they handed me this piece of paper, and it's still hanging on our fridge right now, and it listed everything that I needed to know if I physically hurt during my recovery. They don't give you a piece of paper to tell you what happens when you emotionally hurt during that time. No one warned me that when I walked through my apartment door and I was smiling because I was so happy to be home, that I would also relive the moment that I was taken out on a stretcher. There's not a piece of paper that tells you it's okay to fall asleep every night. You don't have to be afraid that you're not going to wake up the next morning. Because I would lay in bed and I would be exhausted because my brain hurt so bad. And I wouldn't want to fall asleep because I was afraid that Travis was going to wake up in the morning and I was going to be dead.
I think we both consider ourselves really lucky because it was not nearly as bad as it could have been. And there's been very few things that have made me happier than when Caroline got back to work.
All of us here are extremely happy, and the Caroline is back and that she's feeling much better. We missed you.
I missed you guys so much. It feels so good to be back.
You get a new lease on life and a new perspective in living your life. Moments are richer with people. The good moments are far better than they were before. Tomorrow isn't a guarantee. You don't know how many more moments you have. So that's what I plan to do with this moving forward, is just be here, because I can be here.
We were stunned.
Foxfire Engine 24, Mansfield Rescue 35. Response for a female party, possible stroke.
A stroke at 27 years old.
These last 9 days have been the scariest of our lives.
As I spent 6 weeks at home recovering, one question lingered. How could this have happened?
It's really important to realize that stroke strikes anybody, whether you're male or female, no matter what your age is, no matter what your other underlying risk factors or comorbidities are.
This is Dr. Hugo Aparicio. He's my neurologist at Boston Medical Center, where I recovered from my stroke last October.
For you, it was some of the classic symptoms, right? Like facial weakness and a little bit of arm weakness. What likely happened is one of the arteries in the brain that controls the motor function of the arm and the face became either fully or partially occluded.
My CAT scan done within an hour of my initial symptoms shows the clot that blocked off blood flow to a portion of the right side of my brain.
There's an area here that's kind of tightened, that's not over here. This area is where we presume the clot had lodged.
If you look at the MRI, it shows the stroke itself.
You can see that it's more hyper-intense, the signal, and that indicated to the doctors that there was an acute stroke there.
For a week, I was monitored at BMC. 4 months later, Dr. Aparicio is still looking into the exact cause of my stroke, as he says the research into strokes in younger people is really ramping up.
We've seen it over the years has been, rates of stroke have been declining in both older folks and younger folks because of better risk factor control. But we have noticed that it may actually be even increasing in younger folks, the rates of stroke.
Dr. Aparicio says the reason why isn't clear yet. He says research suggests high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and the opioid epidemic could be contributing.
Now, in my case, I'm 27, healthy, and I have low blood pressure. I didn't really have any of those symptoms. Do you guys see that?
Yes, certainly we do. Usually when patients present without the typical risk factors like high blood pressure and smoking or diabetes, usually that implies that it's one of the more rarer causes of stroke.
Like a heart defect or a clotting disorder, both of which I was checked for.
It's great that the public health message is getting out there, but it's concerning that people are still fairly unaware of stroke symptoms.
When it comes to recognizing the signs of a stroke, think fast. F is for face, A is for arms, S is for speech, and T is for time. Time is key.
You could have symptoms like vertigo, trouble walking, partial loss of your vision, symptoms that a lot of people don't realize are associated with stroke.
According to the CDC, someone in the U.S. has a stroke every 40 seconds. Every 4 minutes, someone dies of one. For those who do recover, they do so without part of their brain.
It doesn't recover. It's irreversibly or permanently injured. But the brain is really remarkable, especially in younger people, that the brain can recuperate in terms of establishing other connections to other parts of the brain.
What I've been reminded throughout my recovery is that my story of stroke as a young person is shared by people around the world, across the country, and even right here in southern New England. Over the last 4 months, I've connected with other young stroke survivors, whether it be through the power of social media or over a cup of coffee. And in January, I was lucky enough to sit down and chat with 2 of them.
I'm Austin Prario, I'm 22 years old, and I'm a stroke survivor.
I'm Jamie Coyle, I'm 24, and I'm a stroke survivor.
2 years separate them in age, 10 years separate their strokes. It was August of 2008 when Jamie Coyle had hers.
I was playing hockey at a hockey game, and I had just scored a goal. I came off the ice and I had a stroke.
Only 12 years old at the time, a scared Jamie says she couldn't speak. She collapsed and was taken to the hospital.
I said, "Mom, what happened to me?" And she said, "You know, you suffered a stroke." And I was like, "Oh, that's it? Like, thank God." I thought I was like dying. And I didn't really comprehend or understand what the rest of my life would be like.
Now 24, Jamie has lived half her life as a stroke survivor. Her recovery, challenging at times. Many days filled with physical, occupational, and speech therapy.
That was definitely the scariest moment of my life.
Austin Prario has had his fair share of scary moments. He had his first stroke as a young child after being born with only 3 functioning heart chambers instead of 4. He had 3 open heart surgeries in his first 3 years of life, but his family never lost hope.
My dad said, "No, my son's gonna run a marathon." He did the next year in 1998, and he carried me across the finish line.
Years later, Austin became the first person to run the Boston Marathon with a congenital heart defect. Shortly after, in June of 2018,
I went to the gym at lunch. Then I came back and I wasn't feeling great. And I just got like all tingly. I couldn't feel my left side. And I got just really nauseous. And I didn't know what to do, so I sat there and I stayed for the rest of the day.
When Austin got home from work, he took a nap and woke up to pins and needles in his leg. When he got to the hospital, he was diagnosed with a TIA, also known as a mini stroke.
And I think the biggest thing to overcoming a stroke, I mean, for me, was the anxiety of it. Like I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything. I was just so afraid of everything in life.
It's a feeling these two share. Jamie says she still deals with anxiety and PTSD from her stroke, but she's channeled that pain into her push to raise awareness. In 2016, Jamie wrote a book called The Luckiest Girl in the World, the foreword written by another stroke survivor, former New England Patriot Teddy Bruschi. She also started an Instagram account called Stroke Survivors Never Quit, allowing other survivors like myself to share our stories.
Because I feel really lucky to have survived.
For Austin, things have come full circle. The young man born with a heart defect now works for the American Heart Association. He says his work has been therapeutic during an isolating time.
A lot of times if you have a stroke, you think you're alone, you're lost, but there are other people fighting just as hard as you did, and you can beat it.
Both Austin and Jamie prove that stroke can affect people at any age, any time, and in any shape. But that 6-letter word has not defined them. They both agree their stories are worth so much more when shared.
I want to be able to help other people. It's not about me. It's about other people that I can help and impact every day. And I think that's what's so cool about being here, being a part of it.
Austin says his doctors believe he had that mini stroke because he didn't take his baby aspirin that morning. As for Jamie, her doctor says they'll never determine the cause of her stroke. And according to the American Heart Association, the cause of ischemic stroke in 1/3 of young patients remains undetermined. I'm Caroline Goggin, Eyewitness News.